vampire. I'm not going to sit there and be like, well, they killed themselves, so they must be correct. Like, what do you mean? Does this seem like a dude who's like, yeah, no, I got what's going on. Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. It's happening. Popping. The problem is there's a lot of dudes out there, even that like follow me, even in this community, that are just not of sound mind, bro. You guys become leftists because you think that the system is fucked up. And every single goddamn day, I explain to you how the system is fucked up. And yet there are still so many people who love diving into conspiratorial thinking, which is spiritual, ideological, mystical, and completely untethered from dialectical materialism. It's just so anti-materialist and frustrating to have this conversation over and over again. It is pure and utter liberalism. That's all it is. Now, obviously, we do enjoy conspiratorial thinking. I think conspiratorial thinking is fun, as long as you stay looking at it from the outside and not diving into the water. One of the craziest parts about this is that this is something that I yell about on a regular basis. As much as I love conspiracy theories and like looking at them and laughing about them, the unironic thing is that I am very like anti-conspiracy theory when it comes to the believing the conspiracy theories. I'm very pro-conspiracy theory because I'm fascinated by that way of thinking. I love conspiracy theorists and I love looking into conspiracy theories because it's like very interesting. But that doesn't mean I'm pro-conspiracy theories. I regularly yell at people who do believe that. And the fact that there's still hella people who are like, no, dude, we got to listen to his ideas. Like, he seems of sound mind here. How do you not see that? How do you not understand that there's a difference between like a long history of self-immolation in the form of anti-war protest that has happened in the form of like environmental activism and whatnot versus a guy who thinks that like, you know, it's like killing yourself over, yeah, the Fruit of the Loom agenda. You know what I mean? Did Fruit of the Loom actually have a fruits on the tag or not? I'm going to myself to investigate it. Like, investigate Fruit of the Loom, please. Like, get the out of here. Jesus Christ. People self-immolating over birds are not real. And then chat will be like, maybe he has some ideas there. Like, calm down. Sometimes people are crazy and they need to be snapped back. They need medication. They need medical intervention. This is the pamphlet that this dude chucked in the air. A brief guide to New York University's most criminal secrets, political revenge killings, blackmail rings, Ponzi schemes, money laundering, criminal propaganda. All of these wild claims have been proven. Visit theponzipapers.substack.com for footnotes, a see proof, and the secret fascist crime of the century. The worst part about these kinds of conspiratorial thinking, especially if it's like in the pocket of genuine corruption amongst the elite, the issue is a lot of people see the things like Jeffrey Epstein, okay, and they don't have a way of fully conceptualizing why this is happening because they are not rooted within materialist thinking. And then basically they think that it's happening because of good evil dynamics, and they start hyper focusing on like all of these like convoluted networks of criminal conspiracy amongst the societal elite. And the problem is the thread that you pulled on in the first place is oftentimes shrouded within a little bit of truth and a grain of truth. That's how Alex Jones does what he does very well as well. He will say there's mass surveillance happening and he will be right, but then he'll also say it's being done by pedophile lizards that are coming from different dimensions, and you're like, what the do you understand? Like, I'm sure this guy in a sea of conspiracy theories that he wrote on his Substack, especially if he's like somewhat of a leftist, has some truth, like a grain of truth, like a nugget of truth about like the elite are criminals. You know what I mean? They're not criminals in the way that this dude thinks they are. Do you understand what I mean? And it's very frustrating to see dudes in this community literally ride that line as well. It's also something I shit on quite regularly. It's something that I criticize quite regularly in this very community. You know, if you are one of those people that looks at this and goes, well, he seems like he was a leftist. It seems like it was a leftist, and it seems like he was of sound mind when he did this. Like, let's look into his conspiracy theories. It's like, well, no, our disinformation campaign is complete when everything the American public believes is false. CI Director Bill Casey. Oh my God, pamphlet writing. This is the other part that I never understand. It's like, bro, if you're writing this much and reading this much, like, why don't you read something valuable? You know what I mean? How the are you like, I'm gonna read so much, and then what are you reading? Great Reset, anti-vaxxer, conspiracy theories, you know? This is what's so crazy about conspiracy mindset. What he's saying is that you hear so frequently from the likes of Aaron Rodgers and whatnot, but all it took for some dumb motherfucker in the chat was the fact that he might be like a leftist. And you're like, hold on, let's listen to what he has to say. Maybe he's serious. And it's so nutty, dude. It's like, bro, exercise a little bit of critical thinking, please, for the love of Christ. Like, just because somebody says they're a leftist or says the right word doesn't mean they're of sound mind. There are plenty of people who say they're actual Marxists and whatnot who are just absolutely abject nutters, okay? This is how you find yourself in a goddamn cult, like the one that, what's that ginger that was leading, Caleb Maupin, how you find yourself in the throes of like Laroshite propaganda or revolutionary communism with Bob Avaki and the chairman. So many idiots, dude. Jesus Christ. People literally automatically think, oh, I'm a leftist, so I'm smart. And other people that say they're a leftist are also smart. No, that's not the case, okay? Some of you motherfuckers are very dumb.
I wanted to ask about security. Obviously, there's about NYPD officers. Are you going to be putting more officers? Is there any change to the strategy of what the protocol was before?
Listen, Mark, after every incident, we have an after action, and we'll talk about if we're going to add officers or not. But just so you know, we had a lot of officers in the area. It is open to the public to still walk through the park, and so there was no security breach here at all.
Bro, this level of alienation, this level of isolation, this level of like unregulated access to too much information online is breaking people, including even people in this community. You're coming in here and you're like, hold up, this guy might have some good opinions, and you're like a 6-month subscriber. It's like, bro, are you insane? How have you been in here for as long as you have, and you still have this attitude that like maybe he's got some truths, maybe he's like exposed some hidden underlying truth? It's like, bro, you are so crazy. How the have you not accidentally picked up on what we on in this community on a regular basis, of what I should on at least? It's weird, man. This comes from a lot of hurt, okay? It comes from a place of hurt. This dude is hurt. He's broken. I'm not going to completely adopt your ideology, but I respect where we disagree enough to continue listening. Okay, well, understand something, okay? Just because someone says they're the leftist doesn't mean they're smart or correct or finding the truth, okay? That's number one. Exercise a little bit of critical thinking. Number two, and that is for me as well, okay? Don't just like take everything I say at face value and be like, oh, I believe it. The moment that you move away from like conspiratorial thinking being something of a fascination to like legitimately believing in it, like when you start saying like, well, Anthony Fauci actually does have an ownership stake in the vaccines, and that's why everyone was being vaccinated, and not the real conspiracy about vaccination, which is that we are cattle, okay? We're cattle. That's it. I don't understand how so many people were like anti-vaxxers in this situation when rich people were cutting the line to get the vaccine, dumbass. You're so stupid. You're such a stupid person that you literally think that like the societal elite were trying to cull the masses by vaccinating them and killing them with like heart attacks or whatever, and not that we're literal cattle and they wanted to make sure that we could return to work after getting COVID. So it was basically just like a regular cold. That's what the vaccine did. How did you disregard so much goddamn evidence? But also, conspiratorial thinking is very simple thinking. Think about it simply. Think about it simply. If the vaccine killed people, why the did Rupert Murdoch get it before anybody else? You think they would get vaccinated if it actually killed people? Do you think they would cut the line if it actually killed people? If you want to think about it in an anti-materialist way, think about it like that. Coronavirus existed among cattle. They get vaccinated all the time. Why? We're getting vaccinated in a similar fashion. We get vaccinated because we are cattle. You are not a productive laborer when you're sick and possibly dying, okay? They had a vested interest in vaccinating all of us so we would get back to work. There are certain issues that I get very, very touchy on, and like believing conspiracies is one of those things that I'm very frustrated about. I always get very mad about like people that come in here and do like anti-vaxxer. And there's definitely like a lane for anti-vaxxers on the left as well, and it's very frustrating. It pisses me off. I get very passionate about that because it's like faulty data, bad data, psychotic ways of thinking. In the most reductive terms, it is very up right now, and people try to make sense of it, and they have a hard time making sense of it all. Anyway, I feel sad about this dude. Look at this guy. Look at how much he was writing, bro. You could have been writing prose. You could be writing things that are like, I don't know. Hello, friends. If you're wondering about sprawling madness I've been on about, here's my first crack at a cohesive summary. Questions and feedback infinitely appreciated. Does the story sound logical, important, and reactionable? My gratitude to my beta readers, 2Cell, HHH, and the rest of the captive audience of Cell Block 30, and to the Alamo for teaching me what a Zine is. Yeah, there's like people in here trolling. Not gonna lie, I've researched everything he was saying and it checks out. Facts about Peter Thiel. He co-founded PayPal, an early important Facebook investor. He convinced Mark Zuckerberg to allow promote political disinformation. His company Palantir sells our internet data to the CIA. He met with billionaire blackmail artist Jeffrey Epstein. All of this that he's saying, he was a huge proponent of cryptocurrency for years. His romantic partner, Jeff Thomas. So everything he's saying about Peter Thiel, not completely incorrect. I mean, it's mostly correct, okay? Peter Thiel, bad guy. Not a good guy at all. Peter Thiel, definitely. Palantir is AI surveillance technology. Palantir does work with the CIA. All that stuff is correct. It's when you move away from the correct stuff to like try to tie all the strings together. And the string that binds it all is just the glue that binds it. Self-interest, okay? It's just pure self-interest. It's just capitalism. When you connect the dots and then you're like looking for some other secondary evil, that's when you start getting to this spiritual thinking where you personally end up mystifying class dynamics on your own. What is cryptocurrency? The mysterious, unregulated currency, the world's first planetary decentralized Ponzi scheme industry with its own high-frequency trading shadow banking theft network. Every dollar that was used to buy crypto was stolen via the U.S. stock market, but the theft has not yet been revealed. Soon we'll have a global economic collapse and the crypto Ponzi goes insolvent. Like even then, it's like assuming that cryptocurrency is that significant and would collapse the global economy is just crazy. My God, man, this guy was not well. Yeah, he was constantly suing people, including the Hillary Clinton Foundation, like the Clinton Foundation, sorry, over and over again. Order to show cause. The court directs plaintiff to show cause by filing a written declaration within 30 days. And then there's still so many people who are like, no, actually, he's right. The defendants are Bill and Hillary Chelsea Clinton Foundation, Bullfrog Capital, Emerson Collective Investment, Jeremy Stoppelman Trustee, Ribbit Capital, Stanford University, StartX, the R. Benioff Revocable Trust, Binance, Changpeng Zhao, 2012 MRL Investments, Mark Andreessen, oh yeah, he can get the smoke, Mark R. Benioff, Matthias Van Tienen, Max Levchin, Mehran Sawami, blah, 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 holy Eduardo Saverin, Mark Zuckerberg, H. Ross Perot Jr., Mark Cuban, Richard Branson, Brian Cass, Mark Zuckerberg. Does this strike you as a dude who had stability, or do you think the internet broke this dude? Okay, he was already broken from the jump, but he definitely was, extra broken. The seasoning came with the online, okay, with the online stuff. Too much internet. The guy who self-immolated at the Trump trial was a minor celebrity on r/Super Bowl and used to co-host a podcast entirely focused on Laura Dern. It ran for 53 episodes. Jesus Christ. 53 episodes on Laura Dern. Wait, what the? A podcast about Laura Dern? Who the is Laura Dern? In his defense, she does have a storied career. She's amazing. Oh my God, bro. I don't know who she is, bro. Chill, okay? Are you still yelling at me? It's not just you. It's just I want to make people stray away. I want to lead the flock away from any kind of conspiratorial thinking such as this one, okay? Especially because a lot of these conspiracies are very dangerous because they arrive dangerously close at the truth before making such a psychotic pivot that sometimes many people don't even recognize it because they're like, well, these things are correct. Nobody's talking about these things here. Yeah, Jeffrey Epstein probably didn't kill himself. That was awfully suspicious. It feeds you a nugget of truth and it gives you like a sense of shelter where you all of a sudden lower your guard, lower your critical thinking skills, and then before you know it, you're believing in like, the vaccine turning you into a homosexual autistic man or something. And every single annoying little liberal centrist pervert is going to make it seem like this is exactly what the left is about for the upcoming month or so, and also tie this back to like Aaron Bushnell and he was exactly this crazy and yada yada yada. I already know what's about to happen. Just remember that in a month when people are still talking about how, yeah, remember that guy who self-immolated? Was he a fan of yours? Oh, that's what you promote. That's what you say. This will be used to discredit leftist movements. This will be used to discredit pro-Palestinian protests and advocacy. No one will talk about how like genuinely, undesirably broken this person was. But it doesn't matter. There's plenty of loonies on the left too. On the loony left, I do feel bad because seemingly he's like a part of adjacent, if he's on Stupid Poll, if he's on like Brace Belden, if he's on TrueAnon and stuff, like he's in adjacent communities. There's a point where he might have even been a fan. He might have watched some of my content. I feel sad that I couldn't reach out to him. You know what I mean? I feel very sad that this is the type of person that I personally feel like I failed. You know what I mean? If this is like a person who was in an adjacent community, there's a likelihood he could have been here at a certain point. And it makes me upset that there wasn't more I could have done, that I could like reach out to this person. And there are a lot of people like this that are hurt, okay, that are suffering. It And by that, I mean like hurt and suffering isn't like, they're not all there. They're not all well, okay? It just sucks to think about. Especially when people are compassionate, that compassion leads them to feel sad and it causes them to feel nihilistic. They feel more vulnerable and more susceptible to conspiratorial thinking. And then they basically keep pulling those threads until they get to a dangerous place. And when you pair that up with your material circumstances, fundamentally broken healthcare structure, and lack of access to medication, lack of access to proper nutrition, lack of access to proper healthcare in the form of therapy, and all of a sudden you're in a powder keg. You're alienated. You're looking for groups that will help you. You're looking for people who are like-minded. And then you look at these conspiracies. Maybe you don't understand that those guys, for the most part, are making fun of those conspiracies. Maybe you start believing in some of them. And then you get to this point, you know what I mean? And it's nuts. As a part of the world's largest conspiracy, our most elite and most criminal universities have used the Israel-Hamas war to trick us into thinking we must all be angry, divided warmongers while they undermine campus protests to keep us from uniting against endless war. The bad news, we've been taken over by supervillains who brainwashed themselves into thinking it was a good idea to poison all the media, culture, and education for decades so they could do a multi-trillion-dollar Ponzi scheme who's about to send the world economy on the biggest cliff in history. The Ponzi scheme he's referencing is cryptocurrency, by the way, I think. Judging by what he was talking about with respect to crypto, it does feel like his mental state is shattered. Oh, supervillains are doing this. No, they're not, okay? It's not supervillains. It's just like everyday people. The good news, we have the stupidest form of government in the world history, and we're about to discover the entire economy is a lie, so we're about to mock it mercilessly and abolish it. In our last installment, we learned just how criminal Reddit is. In order to serve the criminal interests of the supervillain owners, Reddit uses troll armies to make us bitter, divisive, misinformed, and hopeless. They coordinate enough action to get us think that we must be divided, that we're supposed to be divided. Look, dude, the population of people that are actually active on Reddit is so goddamn marginal that this immediately hits exactly one of the main veins that I criticize regularly in this very community. I tell you guys all the time, this is what you have on. This spells isolation. This spells isolation. If you think Reddit is a powerful tool in dividing people, you are brain broken. Are there actually troll farms operating on Reddit? Of course there are. But this is no different than a more center-left version of the Blue Anon conspiracy that everything is Kremlin ops. You are greatly overstating the impact of a social media platform that is not that popular overall in the grand scheme of things. We greatly tend to overstate the importance of things that we consume on a daily basis. That's why a lot of people are lasered in on like podcaster drama and think that that actually is a substitute for like understanding the way the world works. That's why so many people, even in this community and many adjacent communities, literally look at Vosh is doing or what Destiny's doing and the toxicity that spawns out of that conversation and think like that's the end all be all of like real political conversations happening. We are literally ants, okay? We're ants in the grand scheme of things. Do you understand? None of that has any real world impact. This is, of course, gaslighting. They're telling us in the hell world. Central to this is a constant effort to divide the populace. The biggest threat to secret kleptocracy, which is a fancy name when con artists take over the government, is a united movement against this, and they know this, so they slice us into tribes and bubbles, giving each of us a slice of truth and a whole lot of bullshit. An actual propaganda technique developed at Princeton that makes us angry at other tribes. Reddit is just one vehicle that's being used for this, but we have countless others. News media slicing us into angry political tribes. Daytime television telling us we're awash in moral decay. Reality TV has it right in the name. They show us endless hedonism, materialism, and strife, and they call it reality. Popular films and TV tell us only superheroes can save the world from evil, while they scoff at the idea of collective action, painting the masses as helpless minions. If you're wondering how any of the booklet claims can be proven, it's through repetition. When we see something suspicious, we might have it a hunch. How the did this guy get so close at like materialist thinking and then just dive off the deep end, insane conspiracy theories? How can you get so close and then stray so far away? I mean, I have explained it already. You're literally describing all conspiracy theories. I know. That's why it's always fascinating. That's why I am fascinated with conspiracy theorists and people who believe in them for this very reason. Because I love when a dude says, I hate big pharma. They're all taking away our cure and they're feeding us poison. And it's like there's truth to the underlying sentiment that you're describing, but yet you also simultaneously are like a hog that votes consistently for the Republican Party. And for some reason, it's harder to convince you and shake you off of your firmly held convictions than it is to like a regular old conservative. You know what I mean? So let's maybe not alienate these people by making fun of schizos in here every day. I mean, come on, dude. Sometimes you gotta give people a cold hard shake of reality. Genuine question, is it better to take the time to debunk conspiracies like this, or is it better to just snap people out of it and tell them what they're saying is insane? A bit of column A and a bit of column B. He's not dead, by the way. He's in critical condition, most likely not going to survive it. You don't really survive self-immolation like that. Hyper focusing on the criminality of universities, not because they're like basically just hedge funds that operate identically to hedge funds, okay, but instead thinking that they're like blackmail operations or brainwashing operations in a way that goes beyond just like simply educating you on how, you know, neoliberalism is the way to go for the most part, even though there is a diversity of opinion in universities. But the broadest ways of educating is usually within the comfortable confines of neoliberalism. Moving beyond that, or thinking that this is like being operated simply by like evil people or whatever just sucks. It's just madness.
But more conspiracy-minded people, instead of saying, okay, well, they're probably just working in the interest of big money, will say it's a kleptocracy. Which is where we're at right now. And again, one of the key findings of this research, he's saying that he's doing research, he's not showing the actual work, is that Harvard University is one of the largest organized crime fronts in history, which is how they churn out billionaires. It's a major hub of the sprawling criminal network. This is It can simply be an Ivy League school. That's why they churn out billionaires. Like, because billionaires will go in there. Kids with rich families will go in there. Having an Ivy League background gets you into shit like hedge fund management. That's why. Like, you take a second to unravel these from his conspiracy that he's concocted, and it shows it that it's arguably just as sinister as what he's saying, but much easier to believe. Like, we kind of do have a cabal of people controlling our lives. The rich and powerful are immune from actual prosecution, from tangible consequences of their actions. We know that. Like, we saw it with Jeffrey Epstein. Like, the dude walks on charges of pedophilia. The first time, Alan Dershowitz, friend of Trump, helped him get off. And we know, what was he doing during that time he was supposed to be under house arrest? He was fucking gallivanting on the town and doing all the same shit he was doing before. Like, there is a level of wealth that insulates you from actual consequence. And in my personal opinion, it's a level of wealth that degrades a human's morality. Just because you can. Because you don't see the world like everybody else does. You see yourself as above everybody else. We see that with Elon Musk all the fucking time. When you are so wrapped up in trying to see everything as a puzzle that all fits together, you start seeing everything as pieces, even when it's just not there. As we will see with his thing on the Simpsons. I want to look up really quick. 762 episodes of The Simpsons. Keep that in mind. As it turns out, dozens of the writers of The Simpsons went to Harvard. So I asked myself the question, if The Simpsons served the interests of organized crime, how would it do so? So now he is making the case based on a few Simpsons episodes that it is part of a massive brainwashing technique. And he'll also list off other stuff that, oh boy. It offers a dysfunctional family suffering from moral decay, a community incapable of solving its problems, a worker drone who slaves away for an evil billionaire, and cathartic laughs for our poor collective circumstances. Conspiracy theorists do this a lot, where they will, and Alex Jones does it all the time, or he used to do it a lot more, where they talked about things like predictive programming, where essentially they will say that, you know, art, film, music, or whatever, it's meant to make you used to something. You know, like you're going to watch Blade Runner and you're going to get used to the idea of being ruled over by mega corporations. The reality is it's usually backwards from that. It's usually art is a reflection of what artists see in the world, which is why art goes through trends. Like horror is a great actual indicator of it. Because during the Dare Scare, during a rise in evangelical movements through the 1980s and 90s, slasher horror was in. Big old deal slasher horror was. During anxieties about teenagers, drugs, possible violence, slashers like Scream and a whole bunch of knockoffs were in. In the early 2000s, post 9/11, morally gray morality plays in the form of things like Saw, Death Sentence, The Brave One. A lot of stories in the horror space of doing what you need to do to survive, no matter how painful, in the shadow of 9/11. Is it a coincidence? Maybe. Personally, I find that fascinating. I find it likewise fascinating that right after that, after the housing bubble collapsed, there was a massive spate of haunted house horror movies. Paranormal Activity, Insidious, The Conjuring, for years and years, and those finally died out a little bit. I feel like we're kind of in this weird waiting zone right now. But you look at the culture around these different movements, and they do peter out due to just audiences being less interested, but you have to ask yourself, why are the audiences interested at that particular time? Why are those the things that take off? So it's not, when you're talking about things like this, When The Simpsons offers a dysfunctional family suffering from moral decay, community incapable of solving its problems, a worker drone who slaves away for an evil billionaire, and cathartic laughs for our poor collective circumstances, what is more likely? That even though people were at Harvard, that they are basing it on things that they knew were popular, especially in the late 80s, early 90s, where you had a ton of family sitcoms. Married with Children, Home Improvement, Sanford and Sons. Like, the dysfunctional family dynamic appealed so much. It still does. They still make sitcoms just like that. Because everybody can relate to having family members that you can barely stand them sometimes, or something funny happens. Like, what is more likely, that it is predictive programming or it is based on these universally accepted and recognized traits that we see around us all the time because of the way capitalism is formed around us? We see things like worker drones who slave away for an evil billionaire. Like, that is not a new or interesting observation. It's just something that a lot of people accept as their daily life. Like, how old is the idea, boss makes $1, I make a dime? And he goes into some specifics, which I don't really want to go over. I think this is like taking literally 2 episodes out of a show with more than 700 that were written by tons of different writers across several decades is... I'm going to say this speaks, I think, to the quality of his research. It is about your average conspiracy theorist research, where they will say, look at all this stuff I've looked at, and then look at this undeniable proof, and the proof is just things that have a tangential similarity to reality. We realize the criminal truth of The Simpsons. Our elites are telling us that our eroding collective circumstances are our own fault and we can't do anything about it, while they steal the American dream from us. It is, for lack of a more elegant word, brainwashing. Lastly, we string these major discoveries together. Again, he has not made any actual discoveries. This is your brain on conspiracy posting. This is your brain on do your own research when you don't actually have anything tangible to temper yourself with. When you think everything is a development, when you think watching YouTube videos is doing research, when you aren't looking into the sources behind things. This is why I go through so much effort to exhaustively cite almost every source I use. But here's where he gets into some stuff that is actually like, you begin to see his point. Social media, owned by crypto criminals like Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, is flooded with nonsense conspiracy theories and memes reminding us that we are hopeless, helpless, anxious, depressed, ironic, scared, apathetic, escapist, lonely, misguided, and jaded, telling us we can't do anything but have a laugh at our circumstances. And it's here where he's kind of cooking. Like, he's like, yeah, I mentioned all that shit at the beginning. Like, yeah, all of that is true. No fucking notes, dude. Liberals mock the hypocrisy of conservatives. Conservatives mock the hypocrisy of liberals, and our collective circumstances erode. The left shouts all cops are bastards, which ensures they'll be hated by the police and the public, and flies in the face of leftist theory. I don't really agree with that. The public's distrust of the government is at an all-time high, but so is the belief that we are helpless to do anything about it. So here we see, again, he is not really picking any political side. At the beginning, he talked about this kleptocracy, and it seems that anybody who ascribes to a political ideology, to him, is the bad guy. Or they might as well be all on the same side. And with this, a sharp rise in apocalyptic messaging. Climate change will kill us all. COVID will kill us all. Vaccines will kill us all. AI will kill us all. No matter the bubbles we ascribe to, we're bombarded with existential crises. We're bombarded... Blah, blah, blah. We're bombarded with existential crises with no solutions. We've seen a surge in apocalyptic film, literature, and video games that tells us there's no way out of our poor circumstances but societal breakdown. That is, again, not necessarily true. That is not often the message of post-apocalyptic films, and people have been making films about the apocalypse since the 50s. Like, and arguably, again, you can affix what I was saying earlier about different trends in film being based on societal movements, like the 50s being the atomic age, obviously, in the shadow of the Cold War. The ideas about living in a radiated wasteland, pretty scary. You see, carry that on through 60s, 70s, all the way to things like Mad Max. You understand why they happened when they did, why the movies came out when they did. And yeah, we still carry those anxieties with us today, and they still come through in a lot of that media. But sometimes that's just genre convention. Sometimes that's just a franchise. You know? And here's where he really gets in, like, this is where he starts actually kind of breaking down. Zombies tell us that the public is our enemy. If you go to your nearest convenience store, you can buy a can of water called Liquid Death. This is a rotten farce. For our entire lives, we've been flooded with media designed to slowly steer us into a world where the American dream was dead, where the public was rightfully divided against itself, and everybody believed we were powerless to do anything about our worsening circumstances. It is also they can organize an unprecedented apocalyptic rug pull on the entire populace as they pivot to fascism, which is perhaps best understood as kleptocracy at the barrel of a gun. He doesn't specify, outside of the people he talked about at the beginning, he doesn't actually specify how this would happen. Who is actually behind it? We are in a totalitarian doomsday cult. Why on earth would our elites do this? There are many reasons, but the simplest is because capitalism is unsustainable, true, and they knew it. Climate change and resource extraction would catch up eventually, true. So they never intended to sustain it. Again, this is where this is just good points. They knew all along they would gobble up all the wealth they could and then yank the rug out from under us so they could pivot to a hellish fascist dystopia. No connective tissue there. Like there's just not a lot. Exactly. Kiwi TP and Twitch, it's like 50% true and 50% what the fuck. And that is exactly what I'm saying. This is what happens when somebody can recognize things that are wrong, these imbalances, the injustices in society. Yet you don't know what to do about it, but to continue just finding more and more ways to make everything you see into puzzle pieces to fit into this conspiracy puzzle. Here is where, like, this is just, he does not understand the media he's consuming, and he's trying to portray it as predictive programming. So yeah, here's where it goes back into just a worrying lack of media literacy, like just literally not understanding the themes of things and imprinting his own meaning in the most conspiratorial way. Why is Stanley Kubrick's comedy about a mutually assured destruction called Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb? Because he was a cocky secret fascist who was getting us to stop worrying and love the bomb. I don't think he watched that movie. I'm gonna be real. I don't think he watched that movie because it's pretty clearly a black comedy that was satire. Pretty famously and clearly. It is not about how cool nuclear war is. Why did he make A Clockwork Orange? So we rejoice at ultraviolence designed to desensitize us to the horrors of the world. Again, very clearly not the point of that movie. Like, there's a whole reprogramming sequence. The droogs, they're called the droogs, right? Are meant to represent wayward, misguided, violent youth. They're not the heroes of the story. Why were the Manson murders crawling with cover-ups and intelligence agents? Because our government wanted to make us fear for our lives and believe that hippies are deranged psychopaths. I actually want to see what he did here. Largely criticizing O'Neill for exploring too many theories. Early chapters of the book do a convincing job picking out the flaws in Bugliosi's case, but the wheels start to come off when O'Neill begins searching for alternative explanations. So it's... okay. So it does not conclusively prove anything. It is just speculative, investigative work. Which is interesting, like, that's interesting, but it's not conclusive proof. And here's where I don't really understand what he's trying to get at. Why did the Beatles tell us to fear the taxman, to scoff at revolution, chase nonsense conspiracy theories, and tell us that happiness is a worm gun so we would believe it? Why did Wall Street tell us greed is good so we would believe it? Wall Street, another movie, famously not actually about how greed is a good thing. That is the point of that movie. Why did Do the Right Thing tell us we're all racially tribalized so we would believe it? Yeah. And on and on and on. When it comes to any popular media, if you ask yourself the question, why would secret doomsday cult kleptocrats want the public to consume this, you'll find your answers. This assumes that, first off, Do the Right Thing was an independent film, I believe. Yeah, here's where it came from. This incident involved an attack on African-American men in a predominantly Italian-American neighborhood, resulting in one victim being struck by a car and killed. Lee was also influenced by the Alfred Hitchcock Presents episode Shopping for Death, in which the main characters discuss their theory that hot weather increases violent tendencies. Art is inspired by the world around us, and that is why, like I was talking about earlier, there are trends in art that you can see and pick out across certain movements that will ebb and flow, they'll change, and people will gain and lose interest with them depending on the culture they're in. There are times where movies or books aren't even relevant until years later. Like this happened with the 60s when a ton of books from the 30s and 40s were revitalized by professors and English teachers and all that kind of shit. It's not because elites make everything. And especially I feel like that is proven by how he just does not understand the very intentional points of the art being made here. This is obviously very bad. This is the last of his thing. This is obviously very bad news, but the biggest lie we've been told is that we're powerless. We've got one way out of hell world, and that's for the public to realize we've been conned completely so we can build a united movement that shatters every lie they've told us, mocks this rotten farce as loudly as it deserves, and aims at nothing short of abolishing our criminal government so we can build one that serves the public. An admirable goal. For a true history of America since the end of World War II, click here. Oh boy. Here's a federal lawsuit I filed against dozens of perpetrators of the current cryptocurrency Ponzi, not for litigation, just to preserve the information and attach my name to it. I was terrified and hadn't slept in days, and it shows, but it served its purpose of keeping myself alive long enough to keep learning and telling this story. I no longer have my original research files from my crypto rabbit hole. If you want to see them, you'll have to get my laptop back from the government. Ask them how they got it. It's a very fun story. I know you know how powerful you are. I wish you a hell of a lot more than luck. So, it's not clear what what his intention was here. All right, let's look at the true history of World War II. Haunted Carnival Edition. Why? The story was essentially proven in... Oh boy. Don't take my word for it. Here are Hitler's own words. The size of a lie is a definite factor in causing it to believe, because the vast masses of a nation never credit others with the possibility of such great impudence as a complete reversal of facts. Using Hitler's words about a conspiracy against Jews to prove your conspiracy is like, dude, like that's big brain shit, but that is not the move. This is our Great Reset, our New World Order. Great Reset, another thing that is very right-wing, very QAnon adjacent. Right, we got to talk about the liquid death thing. Again, humanity has had a fixation with death in iconography, in fiction, since the beginning of time. Like how much medieval art is focused on death or demons or gargoyles or like curses or any of that shit. So much. It has been a main staple of our artistic exploration as a species, like since we first learned what it was. Like the great darkness waiting for all of us at one point or another. Pretty artistically powerful shit. It is not indicative of a death cult because you have a skull on a drink of water, flavored water. Want to stare the doomsday cult in the face? Just head down to your local convenience store and check out the water selection. There you'll likely see these cans. This is water. Water is life. The fact that water is something we all need to survive has been bottled up and sold to us at unbelievable markups is evidence of kleptocracy. It's just evidence of capitalism. Like it's just evidence of trying to sell things at a higher premium because of brand recognition. Like that's capitalism. That's advertising. That's seeing celebrities with something and going, ooh, I want that too, because they have it. The fact we now have a water called Liquid Death shows just how far this criminal disinformation campaign has come, as they've convinced the public to pay money for water that evokes hopelessness and death. It's just meant to look cool. It's just meant to be like water, but cooler. You're in hell, says Palm Wonderful. That they didn't say you're in hell. It says real life is scary. Protect yourself from free radicals with Palm Wonderful. Is that, I'm sure that was like a haunted, flashing, blacklight imagery, like a real scare in a jump scare in a horror movie. I'm sure it does not say you're only safe in Hellworld if you buy this, in Hellworld if you buy this juice. There's only so much we can do to keep this from continuing to happen. And I think as this election especially heats up, and as we see more heated inflammatory rhetoric coming across, I can only think that we're probably gonna keep seeing stuff like this happening, unfortunately.